When World War II began in September 1939, the United States chose to remain neutral, haunted by the losses of World War I and weakened by the Great Depression. While Nazi Germany tore through Europe and Japan expanded across Asia, America watched carefully, knowing the conflict could eventually threaten global stability. President Franklin D. Roosevelt understood that this war was unlike any before and quietly began preparing the nation. American factories shifted toward military production, supplying weapons, ships, and aircraft to Allied nations through the Lend-Lease program, earning the title Arsenal of Democracy. Though officially neutral, U.S. naval forces escorted supply convoys across the Atlantic, frequently clashing with German submarines. In the Pacific, relations with Japan worsened as the United States imposed oil and trade embargoes to stop Japanese aggression in China and Southeast Asia. Diplomatic talks failed, and tensions reached a breaking point. On December 7, 1941, Japanese forces launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, destroying much of the U.S. Pacific Fleet and killing thousands of Americans. The attack shocked the nation and united its people overnight. The very next day, the United States declared war on Japan, and soon Germany and Italy declared war on America. In that moment, the United States entered World War II, transforming from a neutral observer into a decisive global power ready to fight a total war. After entering World War II, the United States faced harsh realities and painful defeats. America's military was powerful in potential but untested on a global scale, and the early months of 1942 exposed its weaknesses. In the Pacific, Japanese forces advanced rapidly, capturing Guam, Wake Island, and pushing deep into Southeast Asia. The fall of the Philippines was a devastating blow, forcing General Douglas MacArthur to withdraw while promising, "I shall return." American prisoners of war endured brutal conditions during the Bataan Death March, shocking the nation and fueling anger at home. Along the Atlantic coast, German U-boats prowled freely, sinking American ships within sight of U.S. cities and spreading fear among civilians. Yet even in these dark months, America's greatest weapon began to emerge, its industrial power. Factories ran day and night, producing tanks, aircraft, ships, and weapons at a pace the world had never seen. Millions of Americans enlisted, while others supported the war effort on the home front. In April 1942, the Doolittle raid struck Tokyo, delivering little physical damage but a massive psychological blow to Japan and a surge of hope to the American people. That raid forced Japan into a risky plan to eliminate the U.S. Navy once and for all. In June 1942, near the remote island of Midway, American forces, guided by intelligence breakthroughs, ambushed the Japanese fleet. In a single decisive battle, the United States destroyed 4 Japanese aircraft carriers, turning the tide of the Pacific War. Though the road ahead remained long and costly, America had survived its weakest moment and taken its first true step toward victory. After the victory at Midway, the United States shifted from survival to offense, launching its first major ground campaign in the Pacific at Guadalcanal in August 1942. The island was strategically vital, as the Japanese airfield there threatened Allied supply routes between the United States and Australia. American Marines landed under fire, marking the beginning of a brutal 6-month struggle fought in jungles, swamps, and at sea. Both sides suffered heavy losses, and battles raged day and night, with control of the island changing hands repeatedly. Disease, exhaustion, and constant Japanese attacks tested American resolve, but the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps adapted quickly, learning hard lessons about jungle warfare and amphibious assaults. By February 1943, Japanese forces were forced to evacuate Guadalcanal, giving the United States its first sustained land victory against Japan. This success proved that Japanese forces could be defeated and gave American commanders the confidence to adopt a new strategy known as island hopping, which focused on capturing key islands while bypassing heavily fortified enemy positions. At the same time, American shipyards and factories were producing war material in staggering numbers, ensuring that U.S. forces would no longer fight at a disadvantage. Each captured island brought American airfields closer to Japan, tightening the noose around the Japanese Empire. Guadalcanal marked the moment when America's learning curve ended and its momentum began, setting the stage for an unstoppable advance across the Pacific. While American forces pushed forward in the Pacific, the United States also turned its full attention to the war in Europe, where defeating Nazi Germany was considered the highest priority. In late 1942, U.S. troops landed in North Africa as part of Operation Torch, marking America's first major ground involvement against German forces. Though inexperienced, American soldiers faced battle-hardened German troops under Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, suffering early setbacks that exposed weaknesses in leadership and tactics. These painful lessons led to rapid improvements, as commanders adapted and coordinated more closely with British allies. Victory in North Africa not only eliminated Axis forces from the region, but also gave American troops critical combat experience. At the same time, the Battle of the Atlantic raged on, as German U-boats attempted to cut off Allied supply lines. Advances in radar, sonar, and convoy tactics gradually turned the tide, allowing American and Allied ships to cross the ocean more safely. By 1943, the United States had become the backbone of the Allied war effort, supplying men, machines, and resources on an unprecedented scale. The success in North Africa opened the door to the invasion of Italy, bringing the war to Europe's southern flank and pushing the Axis powers onto the defensive. America was no longer a junior partner. It had become a decisive force shaping the outcome of the war. Following the victory in North Africa, Allied forces, led increasingly by the United States, launched an invasion of Sicily in July 1943, opening a new front against Axis Europe. The campaign forced Italy out of the war and led to the downfall and arrest of Benito Mussolini, dealing a major psychological blow to the Axis alliance. However, the fighting in Italy proved far more difficult than expected, as German forces quickly occupied much of the country and turned its mountainous terrain into a deadly defensive battlefield. American and Allied troops faced fierce resistance at places like Monte Cassino, where progress was slow and costly. Despite these challenges, the Italian campaign achieved its strategic purpose by tying down large numbers of German troops that could not be used elsewhere. Meanwhile, American industry continued to overwhelm the Axis with sheer production power, supplying weapons, vehicles, and aircraft not only to U.S. forces but also to Allied nations. By late 1943, it was clear that the balance of power had shifted. The Axis was being pushed back on multiple fronts, and preparations began for the largest and most ambitious operation of the war, the invasion of Nazi-occupied Western Europe. America was now fully committed to delivering a decisive blow that would determine the future of the world. By early 1944, the United States stood at the center of Allied plans to deliver the decisive blow against Nazi Germany through an invasion of Western Europe. Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious assault in history, was carefully prepared under the command of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, with American forces playing a leading role. Months of deception operations misled German commanders about the true landing location, while millions of U.S. troops, vehicles, and supplies were secretly assembled in Britain. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, American, British, and Canadian forces stormed the beaches of Normandy under relentless fire. U.S. soldiers faced especially brutal resistance at Omaha Beach, where cliffs, machine gun nests, and heavy casualties threatened to halt the invasion entirely. Yet through determination, courage, and sacrifice, American troops broke through German defenses, securing a foothold in France. As the days passed, more American divisions poured into Europe, supported by overwhelming air and naval power. The success of D-Day marked a historic turning point, as the long-awaited Second Front in Europe was finally opened. From that moment on, Germany was forced into a defensive war it could no longer win. America had proven not only its industrial might, but also its ability to lead massive combat operations, pushing the Allies one step closer to victory in Europe. After breaking out of Normandy, American forces surged across France with speed and force, turning the invasion into a full-scale liberation. Paris was freed in August 1944, and across Europe, occupied nations celebrated as U.S. troops pushed the German army back toward its own borders. Yet victory was not simple or bloodless. As Allied momentum grew, Germany launched a desperate counteroffensive in December 1944 through the dense Ardennes forest, beginning what became known as the Battle of the Bulge. Caught by surprise in freezing winter conditions, American soldiers faced fierce attacks, shortages of supplies, and brutal weather. Surrounded units refused to surrender, most famously holding the town of Bastogne despite overwhelming pressure. As reinforcements arrived and the weather cleared, American air power devastated German positions, crushing Hitler's final gamble. The failed offensive exhausted Germany's remaining reserves and shattered its ability to continue the war. In early 1945, U.S. forces crossed the Rhine River, penetrating deep into the heart of Germany itself. American troops liberated concentration camps, revealing the full horror of Nazi crimes and strengthening their resolve to end the war completely. German cities fell one by one as Allied forces closed in from all sides. By April, Berlin was surrounded, Hitler was dead, and German resistance collapsed. On May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. In Europe, the war was over. The United States had played a decisive role in defeating Nazi Germany, not only through military power, but through endurance, sacrifice, and leadership that reshaped the fate of an entire continent. While victory in Europe was approaching, the war in the Pacific demanded an even greater price from American forces. The United States continued its grueling island-hopping campaign, moving closer to the Japanese mainland with each assault. In 1944, American troops invaded the Mariana Islands, including Saipan, Guam, and Tinian, establishing airfields that would allow long-range bombers to strike Japan directly. These battles were marked by ferocious fighting, as Japanese soldiers and civilians alike resisted fiercely, often fighting to the death. In 1945, the assaults on Iwo Jima and Okinawa became defining moments of the Pacific War. On Iwo Jima, U.S. Marines faced fortified positions, volcanic ash, and relentless gunfire. The iconic raising of the American flag on Mount Suribachi symbolized courage, sacrifice, and the indomitable spirit of the troops, though thousands had died to secure the island. Okinawa, the largest amphibious operation of the Pacific Campaign, revealed the full brutality of Japanese defense tactics, including kamikaze attacks that sank ships and killed thousands. Despite unimaginable casualties, American forces prevailed, securing islands within striking distance of Japan itself. The relentless advance demonstrated the power of America's industrial capacity and military coordination, proving that no obstacle, no terrain, no enemy fortification could halt the U.S. march toward victory. Each island taken brought the war closer to its inevitable conclusion, but the human cost weighed heavily on soldiers and civilians alike. By mid-1945, the United States faced the final and most difficult phase of the Pacific War, ending Japan's resistance without incurring catastrophic casualties in a mainland invasion. Despite devastating losses at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, Japanese forces showed no willingness to surrender, employing kamikaze attacks and fanatical defense that promised even greater bloodshed. Faced with the prospect of hundreds of thousands of American and Japanese deaths, President Harry S. Truman authorized the use of a new and terrifying weapon, the atomic bomb. On August 6, 1945, the city of Hiroshima was destroyed in a single, blinding explosion, instantly killing tens of thousands and leaving countless others suffering from radiation. 3 days later, a second bomb struck Nagasaki, further demonstrating the devastating power of nuclear weapons. Japan, shocked by the unprecedented destruction and facing total defeat, surrendered unconditionally on August 15, 1945, bringing the long and brutal war to a close. The decision to use the atomic bomb remains one of history's most debated, but for the United States, it ended the bloodiest conflict in human history. Victory in the Pacific completed America's role as a decisive global power, showcasing the combined might of its military, industry, and scientific achievement. From Pearl Harbor to Nagasaki, the journey had transformed a nation from cautious observer to the dominant force in the world. With the surrender of Japan in August 1945, World War II finally came to an end, leaving the United States as the undisputed global superpower. The nation emerged victorious, but the war had left deep scars. Over 400,000 American soldiers dead and countless others wounded, physically and emotionally. Despite the cost, America's economy experienced a remarkable transformation. Wartime production had lifted the nation out of the Great Depression, and the factories that once produced tanks, planes, and ships quickly shifted back to civilian goods, fueling a post-war boom. Politically, the United States assumed a leadership role on the global stage, spearheading the creation of the United Nations and shaping international policies to prevent future conflicts. American influence expanded across Europe and Asia, with military bases, economic aid, and reconstruction programs, such as the Marshall Plan, cementing its position as a protector of freedom and democracy. Socially, the war had accelerated changes within the nation. Women who had joined the workforce during the conflict were laying the groundwork for future civil rights movements, and returning veterans benefited from the GI Bill, creating new opportunities in education, housing, and business. Militarily, the U.S. maintained a powerful standing army and nuclear arsenal, ensuring that its victory in World War II translated into lasting geopolitical power. The war had tested the nation's resolve, endurance, and ingenuity, and America emerged not only as a victor, but as a model of resilience and global leadership. From the first hesitant steps toward war in 1939 to the triumphant victories across two oceans, the United States had fundamentally reshaped the course of history and secured a role that would define the second half of the 20th century. As the smoke of World War II cleared, the United States emerged not only as a victor, but as a dominant global power, its influence shaping the post-war world order. However, victory also brought new challenges, particularly the rise of the Soviet Union as a rival superpower. Although the Allies had cooperated to defeat Nazi Germany, ideological differences between American democracy and Soviet communism quickly created tension. The U.S. sought to rebuild war-torn Europe through economic aid, most notably the Marshall Plan, aiming to stabilize governments and prevent the spread of communism. At the same time, the U.S. assumed responsibility for the occupation and reconstruction of Japan, transforming it into a democratic ally in Asia. The military lessons of World War II were also applied to new challenges, as America maintained a strong standing army, advanced technology, and its nuclear monopoly to deter potential aggression. Diplomatic efforts led to the formation of NATO in 1949, cementing alliances with Western Europe, while the Truman Doctrine formalized America's commitment to containing communism worldwide. Domestically, the United States faced the task of integrating returning veterans into civilian life, expanding education, and fostering economic growth. The transition from total war to peacetime demanded innovation, leadership, and vigilance. By the end of the 1940s, it was clear that World War II had not only secured America's victory, but also set the stage for a new era, a world in which the United States would act as a global policeman, a defender of democracy, and a force shaping international politics for decades to come. World War II left the United States with a lasting military and technological legacy that would shape global conflicts for decades. The war had accelerated innovation at an unprecedented pace. American factories had produced thousands of aircraft, tanks, ships, and submarines, creating a military-industrial complex capable of supporting sustained global operations. Advances in aviation, from long-range bombers to carrier-based aircraft, gave the U.S. unmatched air power, while the Navy perfected amphibious warfare, crucial in the Pacific's island-hopping campaigns. Perhaps the most transformative achievement was the development of nuclear weapons, culminating in the Manhattan Project and the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The creation and use of these weapons demonstrated not only scientific ingenuity, but also America's ability to harness technology for strategic advantage. Radar, sonar, and code-breaking technologies, including the cracking of Japanese and German codes, revolutionized intelligence and military strategy. The war also accelerated mechanization and logistics, ensuring that troops could be supplied across oceans at an unprecedented scale. These innovations were not limited to military use. Many, such as jet engines, computing devices, and medical advancements, would influence civilian life and industry. By the war's end, the United States had transformed from a country wary of global engagement into a technological powerhouse, capable of projecting power across continents and oceans, and prepared to lead in a world where science, industry, and military strength were inseparable for national security and global influence. World War II reshaped American society in profound and lasting ways, transforming the nation's social fabric and cultural identity. With millions of men fighting overseas, women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, taking on jobs in factories, shipyards, and offices that had previously been reserved for men. The iconic Rosie the Riveter symbolized female empowerment and demonstrated that women could perform demanding industrial work, laying the groundwork for future movements for gender equality. Minority communities also experienced change, as African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans served in the military and filled essential roles on the home front, challenging segregation and racial barriers. The war exposed contradictions in American democracy, as citizens fought for freedom abroad while facing discrimination at home, fueling early momentum for the civil rights movement. Internally, the shared experience of wartime sacrifice fostered a stronger sense of national unity and patriotism, while the GI Bill provided returning veterans with opportunities for education, home ownership, and economic advancement, reshaping the middle class. Culturally, the war influenced art, literature, and film, creating narratives of heroism, resilience, and national pride. Families were forever altered by the absence and return of soldiers, and the collective memory of victory and sacrifice became a cornerstone of American identity. By the end of the 1940s, the United States had emerged not only as a military and economic superpower, but as a society undergoing rapid transformation, ready to embrace modernity, diversity, and a global leadership role in a world that had been profoundly changed by war. With the war finally over, the United States turned from combat to reconstruction, both abroad and at home, solidifying its position as a global leader. Europe lay in ruins, cities destroyed, economies shattered, and millions displaced. America stepped in with a Marshall Plan, providing billions in aid to rebuild infrastructure, stabilize governments, and prevent the spread of communism. Japan, too, was reconstructed under American supervision, transformed into a democratic, industrial ally through reforms in governance, education, and society. Simultaneously, America helped establish global institutions aimed at ensuring lasting peace. The United Nations provided a forum for diplomacy, while the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank offered economic stability and development support. Domestically, returning veterans utilized the GI Bill, fueling education, housing, and a booming middle class, while industries transitioned from wartime production to consumer goods, sparking an unprecedented economic expansion. Culturally and socially, the war's lessons, sacrifice, resilience, and unity permeated American identity, while innovations in technology, aviation, and nuclear energy positioned the nation at the forefront of global science and industry. By the late 1940s, the United States had transformed into a modern superpower, militarily formidable, economically dominant, socially dynamic, and diplomatically central in shaping the post-war order. The world's eyes now looked to America, not as a hesitant observer, but as a decisive force capable of defining global peace, prosperity, and security for generations to come. World War II concluded with a decisive victory for the United States, marking the end of a global conflict that had reshaped nations, economies, and societies. From the first attack on Pearl Harbor to the surrender of Germany and Japan, America had transformed itself into a military powerhouse, demonstrating unmatched industrial capacity, technological innovation, and strategic mastery. The sacrifices of millions of soldiers, sailors, and airmen, alongside the dedication of civilians on the home front, had culminated in triumph across two oceans. The United States emerged not only as a victor, but as a global superpower. Its influence felt politically, economically, and culturally worldwide. European nations rebuilt under American aid, Japan was democratized and industrialized, and new international institutions ensured that America played a central role in shaping the post-war order. The war had also left enduring legacies: advancements in aviation, nuclear power, medicine, and logistics, social transformations for women, minorities, and returning veterans, and a reinforced national identity defined by courage, resilience, and leadership. By 1945, the United States had firmly established itself as a force capable of defending freedom, projecting power, and guiding the world toward a future that would reflect both the lessons and victories of its greatest conflict. The story of World War II, from its outbreak to America's rise as a superpower, was now complete, a testament to strategy, sacrifice, and the enduring spirit of a nation forged in the fires of global war.